Welcome, everybody. This is day 3 of BigBlueButton World 2023. We have a really great presentation to kick off. I would like to introduce Steve Ruiz. He is the co-founder and main developer, designer, chief architect. I'm sure I can go on, Steve. tldraw exists because Steve just never gave up. It was like persistence. So we have built tldraw into BigBlueButton. We're really happy to invite Steve back. This is his second presentation at BigBlueButton World. Steve, we'll turn it over to you. Look forward to hearing all about what's coming up with tldraw.
Awesome. Thank you. And let me make sure I have nothing too incriminating on the screen. Looks good. Cool. Thanks for the introduction, Fred. And hello, I'm Steve. I am based in London, though I'm originally from Chicago, as you might hear. And yeah, like Fred said, I am the founder, creator, maintainer, bunch of hats for tldraw. That is what you're looking at here. So tldraw is kind of a fun background story. It came out of my own open source. I worked on a project called Perfect Freehand, and it's demo as well, so I will demo this. See if I give it a fill. This is like for digital ink, like pressure sensitive digital ink that you might have on like a signature block or something like that. And you can kind of see we have a lot of options for how it tapers.
Oh, Steve, I'm going to interrupt. I think you might be just sharing your browser. We don't see anything at the moment.
Yeah. Okay, one moment. Let me. Thanks for letting me know that. Oh wait, no, that's the wrong one. I want to do the entire window. Oh, wait a second. Oh, I see, entire screen. Gotcha, cool. Much better. Okay. Here we go. I'm Steve. Can you see that now? I'm gonna assume that You can see it. Okay, good. Here's what it meant. So this grew out of an open source project that I started called Perfect Freehand. And Perfect Freehand is like digital ink, the type of digital ink you might have on maybe a signature block. There's any time that you want it to have a variable width. If you've ever used like an iPad pencil, it's like the harder you push, the thicker the line gets, and it's based on the pressure. And so this was a project to do that on the web using like SVGs, using basically coming up with a little racetrack that followed your line around and that produced the right result. It's quite hard to do, but I did it in public, figured it out, and along the way I made a lot of these type of interfaces where you can kind of zoom in and zoom out and move around. So my background is in visual art, if you couldn't have guessed, and I figured this was a pretty fun place for me to work on, kind of niche part of the software design industry. And I figured I'd be making things like this sort of user interface a lot. And so I started building my own, kind of like reusable whiteboard-ish thing. And that eventually turned into this, which might look more familiar from BigBlueButton. This was an open source whiteboard named tldraw, where you could create shapes and make those shapes, connect to each other, and they all move, and intelligent, nice arrows and stuff like that. And I released this open source, and that is kind of how this all got started. Folks like Fred saw this and realized, or maybe not realized, but had been looking for a whiteboard tech for their own project, their own app, and started investigating using tldraw, and then now they're using tldraw. And you can do quite a lot with it. It looks pretty good, I would say. I've worked hard to say that. But I did, after this kind of got popular and people started using it, and tldraw.com itself, people started using this, and it kind of grew a little bit more from being a little open source package and a demo into, I don't know, a community, I suppose. Started a company around it, also called tldraw. and built the next version of it, which is this. So this is like tldraw V2 or 2.0, or what else have we called it? Light, or I think that's about it. The new tldraw. And it does, again, it's a whiteboard. You can draw on it. You can diagram. It has arrows. The arrows are a little nicer, I would say. For example, let me do a little highlight reel here. So you have a star. You want to rotate that star. The arrow is going to perfectly kind of crawl along the outline of the arrow as you go. This is also open source, and it is, what would I call that? It's like web native. In other words, most of the whiteboards that you use, like maybe your Miros or your FigJams or browser board, pretty much anything in this space uses the technical decision is to basically paint an image every frame, and so you're controlling your rendering yourself. As compared to the way that the web normally works with like HTML, and you're kind of like telling the browser, here's what I want to see, and the browser is deciding what it should look like. Most graphical applications like this say, I'll tell you what it looks like. It's going to look like this image, and we'll render that to that image whenever we want to change it. We made the decision not to do that. This is actually normal HTML and CSS, and the normal, like, if that means anything to you, like the normal building blocks of the web. So this is not a custom rendering solution. This is like a normal website that just happens to look and feel like a graphical application, like a canvas. But what that's allowed us to do is make a canvas that can support anything. So here's us in Finsbury Park. I'm going to copy this Google Maps URL and paste it into our canvas. And I have the map here on our canvas, and I can do everything that I can normally do with the shape here. I can move it around. I can draw arrows that point to it. Those arrows will stick to it. But because this is a normal website, this map is essentially the same thing that I get on Google Maps. I can double click into it, and now I can move that map around, zoom in, zoom out. If I wanted to, I could still draw on top of it, but still have those experiences. Because it's really not that different than what Google is doing. It's just our website looks a little different than their website. You can imagine there's a lot of opportunities to do cool stuff with this fact alone. You can put YouTube videos in here. I think we have a whole menu of content that you can do, insert, embed, including like Figma projects or code or entire code editors or other tldraw files if you wanted to, or Scratch, etc. So if you were, for example, like perhaps a classroom and you wanted to pull up a video or a map or even music, I suppose, this is a place where you could put that stuff and still have it be interactive in the same way that this map is interactive. So yeah, if you really wanted to write code upside down, you could definitely do it using like a code editor and just spin it around like that. So that is part of the story. The other big part of the story for tldraw is collaboration. So we have, just do a random room here. Collaboration has always been a big part of tldraw. If you want to, this is always risky, so you have to be on your best behavior, but you could take out your phone and grab this QR code and join me here in this multiplayer room. I say risky because you might notice that I didn't have to log in. There is no such thing. So here's me, here's someone, and yeah, it works pretty quickly. It also works across devices. So like whether you're on your phone or your tablet, again, it's just a normal website. So it'll work wherever you are. Currently I think the limit is like 50 people for the room, but that's just an arbitrary number that we sort of picked. If you want to change your name it's up here. So I'll change mine to just Steve. This version of tldraw supports things like following. So let's see if I change this one to other Steve. And I can follow other Steve. And then as this viewport moves around, then so will the other one. So you can imagine for a classroom, you would want to be able to follow the teacher or follow a student as they're presenting. There's also just a lot of little fun stuff like cursor chat. I could press the slash key and type a little message. And that'll go away after a few seconds. And then there are also nice to haves in our little extra shape menu down here that are new versus the first version. You have, of course, highlighters, which look a very particular way. They're both rendered in front of and behind things. And you also have a laser pointer, which is quite pretty, I think. I mean, I made it, so I'm biased, but this is using the same, funny enough, the same ink algorithm as I showed over here. And it all kind of comes back together. So we have a web-based whiteboard. It's free at tldraw.com. The multiplayer is also free. It is, again, here's that QR code. It works across all your different browsers. It implements tons and tons and tons and tons of stuff. Everything from like rotation and stacking and like masking and having parent shapes, all the way to arrows and then curved arrows and then curved arrows with labels and all this type of stuff that is was quite a lot of work, but it's just like the table stakes, I think, for a good app like this. All the arrangements and packing and stuff like that. So these are all the like, you don't have to have them, but they're nice to have. And for a lot of apps, they're more than that. They're sort of like the difference between having an app that feels really good and an app that feels like kind of like hacked together. So like I said, just like the first version, we are open source at github.com. Ooh, that's a wrong link. github.com/tldraw. I'll do this in the other browser so that it's bright mode. It's over there. Not that one. Sorry, window managing. We're open source. We've been working on this. There's a team of 7, mostly here in the UK. And other people have been building with it. We have, kind of a big, long list of teams that have started to implement different things in it. The developer side of tldraw is unfortunately still very much in kind of like in mature alpha. There are still some decisions that we are making to like dial it in to the types of people who are using it. It's a big open source project. There's like, I don't know, does it tell you how many lines of code? It's a lot of code, but it's also just a lot of features. And yeah, it's been kind of an adventure to find the right product configuration that makes sense for the folks who are using it. We have docs at tldraw.dev if you're into docs. Then a whole bunch of examples and things like that for you to look at if you're into it. The fun part of tldraw, again, is that not only is it open source, but it's also very extendable and hackable, like through like code. I don't expect this to be a very technical thing, but I can do things like editor.select all, I guess, right? And it's going to select everything on the screen. So from a programmer perspective, you have like programmatic access from code to do all the things that you can do by hand. They all kind of like use the same tools, which means you can drive them programmatically. So if you wanted to do templates or stuff with AI or you name it, like tldraw is very, very open to that in a way that I don't think there's a comparable product. No one's really tried to do this before. And yeah, so technically powerful, and also has all those juicy arrow-like details involved. So that's tldraw. If you haven't used the eraser, definitely use the eraser. It's also one of the most fun erasers in whiteboarding community. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what what Fred and the team builds with this, as they're kind of moving from the first version of tldraw, which they've done amazing stuff with, onto this successor project, which I have no doubt they will do even more amazing stuff with for classrooms and students all over the world. So that is, I suppose that's my 17-minute version. I could go deeper, or I could answer some questions.
Steve, thanks. I put in the chat that if anybody would like to ask questions, please just type them in the chat. One thing you showed, Steve, was just how instrumentable that tldraw is, which actually must open up some doors. Do you have any thoughts on, like, you can draw things and you can create things, and if you think of a live classroom, we have a teacher who is wanting to engage the students. The whiteboard is featuring large in that engagement. Multi-user whiteboard, which we call it. The whiteboard vision, which Kurt presented yesterday, sort of having 6 students each working on their own individual whiteboard, and the instructor sees like 6 individual whiteboards. You can see which student's struggling in that. But because it's instrumentable, it means it can be driven by something. And if it can be driven by something, there are examples of, like, maybe using some tools, could be AI based. Let's say the instructor would like to give students a task to work on. And maybe, like, I'd like to do Pythagorean, I'd like to solve, please create a diagram that helps the students understand the concept of Pythagorean theorem.
Yeah.
And then it would just do it.
There are some really great, I'll pull up this this example project that has been kind of growing over time. Yeah, we had a little, like, joke feature, Easter egg, something like this, where it would you could right click and say, create a diagram from AI, and it had a text field here, and you could write whatever you wanted, and no matter what you wrote in it, it would think for a while, and it would always draw the same thing, which was like a fish with legs. And when I demoed it, of course, I asked for like a fish with legs, and it was always pretty impressive. And then I would ask for like a skyscraper, and it would just draw the same fish with legs. So I always been on my mind. There's so much potential there with, like, I guess, like, 2 things. One is being able to pull information out of your board. So if I had, like, something like eggs, milk, cheese, and I think in this version, this was made by someone from our community, where you can do like a notes summarizer, and it'll read your notes and come up with something based on, like, what it found. I guess that's a pretty easy summarization, isn't it? And then there's also the idea of, like, creating something new based on what you have. So I think in this version they have. Well, let me just draw my fish again. I think being able to take a. I don't know how long this takes, so we'll find out. But take a drawing and create something else out of it. So, like, maybe taking notes, or taking drawings that you've made yourself, and hitting various APIs in order to create it. It's kind of like a broader search function, very similar, sort of like if you wanted to look for images, you could just make them here. The benefit of the canvas is that it's sort of like very ad hoc. It's you would be in the middle of explaining something, be in the middle of teaching something, and to be able to call up those type of things from within that experience, just saying like, okay, I want to have whatever, a summarize these notes, or create an image based on this sketch, or create an image based on these other images or notes or something, or just kind of perform smart, intelligent searches based on the stuff that's on the canvas. All that just feels very natural. Like the canvas is a very direct manipulation. It's very like you're in one giant context rather than switching between contexts. And the more that you can fit in there, the better. I do wish that our doodle to our doodle to image was working better. Sadly, yeah. But you get the idea. It is a, you know what? Let me. I'll tell you what. I'll even pull up one of Leechen's tweets. It's because he has a good example of like some of these features where he's like grabbing different cards and producing images that are like a summation of those cards. So in this case, it was like what flowers, traditional, etc., and kind of can produce tiling images that way. But yeah, it's like kind of like a thinking space, the canvas in that way. This guy's amazing. So yeah, great community.
Wow. So we are looking to build on top of tldraw 2.0. Have you shared anything else with the community in terms of like when you see like the 2.0 going from an alpha to a beta to a release?
Yeah, we're kind of in the final stage of this whole thing, which is we have something that obviously works. You can load it up, and it has all the APIs that we would expect to have. The places where tldraw is difficult right now is sort of customization. So for example, in tldraw, if I double click on the canvas, it creates a text node there, right? And I can do that. Not everyone wants that feature, but at the moment, it's sort of pretty deeply into the code. Is that the tldraws open source library right now is mostly just the open source version of this particular experience. So what we are doing here today in tldraw HQ here, the whole month really is building out more of those plugin kind of APIs and extensibility, so that this could be something that we can basically that we can actually support that customization story, which has always been part of what, like how I've talked about tldraw. But in it's kind of like the thing that's holding it back from that sort of like beta release is just what those changes need to be. And so that's what we're working on. The good news is it's going very well, but I'm hoping that like at least by the end of the quarter to have this into like a proper developer release. So
nice. And you touched on something earlier, which was improvements. And I think there have been a lot of optimizations that have gone in that you've got into tldraw 2.0. Do you have a quantitative sense of like if you tried to do this in tldraw 1, this is going to be this much faster or more performant or less memory usage than 2.0?
Yeah. Gosh, there's actually a lot. So one of the big things has to do with like scrolling and zooming performance. So I don't know, this might happen too soon or too fast for the camera to catch it, but you notice those like gray boxes there?
Yeah.
So this was something that we hit a lot of problems with on the first version of tldraw, is that especially on the browser, like, but really in anything, you don't want to be rendering the things that are off screen. So like when I'm not looking at this cloud, I don't want to know about the cloud, and I don't want it to sort of be sitting, taking up memory for the browser to have to think about it, etc. So we kind of like hide those things until you go look at them. And then we pop them in, pop them out. That is new. It's also quite tricky to implement, and it is like makes a huge difference. You hardly notice it after like the first 10 seconds of using it, mostly because you're looking at what you're looking to rather than looking for gray boxes. But that makes a big difference. The UI in general is just so much more easy to use, consistent, moving pages around, menus, etc. So the UI has gotten a huge overhaul. There is also a lot. There are like issues with like what would I say? Like image export and text export that were quite hard to solve in the first version, which are now kind of trivial and they've all been solved. The multiplayer especially is our own multiplayer, and the way that works, the kind of the primitives it uses and the things that it like the hooks to hook into the multiplayer. If, for example, if you were using your own backend, those are all new and they're all very much easier to use. And yeah, a lot of the like under the hood stuff is, well, all of the under the hood stuff in terms of how we're storing data and accessing it and querying it and all that, it's just completely overhauled. The surface is very familiar and the visual surface is very familiar, but the way that we're going about stuff is like, it's really benefited from having more specific knowledge on the team, so that those people who are building it are better than me at building these types of things. So yeah.
So Steve, this is amazing. So actually, we've got the next presenter queued up. This is again super amazing. I want to say again how happy we are in the Big Blue Button project. It took us almost 9 months of focused effort to lift out our old whiteboard, move in tldraw, wire it up, modify the backend recordings, make it part of our videos recordings, like major project. But I'm so glad we did it, because when I look at what you're doing in tldraw 2.0 and so on, I would be crying right now if we were still using our old whiteboard. So you have increased the happiness level in the Big Blue Button project a significant amount. And with that, I will thank you for your presentation. We'll look forward to seeing what comes out in tldraw 2.0. And really great work by you and your team, Steve. Very impressive.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Fred.